Alright, so today we'll talk about barbering in more so the digital age and understanding finances as a barber, right? So we happen to be in an industry where you can deal in strictly cash, and thanks to a lot of technological advancements, we can now take electronic payments in a lot of ways, meaning we can get our money a lot faster and we can bank in a multitude of different ways, right? So if you intend to retire from this and, live a life outside of barbering at some point, then you essentially should have your money somewhere electronically, because that is the only legitimate way to grow your money, right? So at the base level, you should have it at the very minimum a high interest yielding savings account, right? So this is an account where you put a set amount of money into, or a random amount of money into, depending on what your financial situation is, and that money grows over time depending on whatever your bank's minimum is to input into that account. So that's one thing. Caveat to that is, you will never save your way to wealth. Money has to be invested. So that savings account should essentially have a cap. And that cap can be determined in a number of ways. Whether or not you want to, and this is me speaking from my knowledge, my experience. I'm not a financial advisor by any means. I didn't go to school for financing, though I probably have more practical knowledge than someone who did, but because I do it myself. So I'm going to speak to you from my experiences, what I do and how I've grown my own money and how it works for me, right? And hopefully you can apply it for yourself, right? So you can't save your way to wealth, right? So what I do is put money into a savings account. The savings account makes me money depending on the limit that's in there. It still makes money regardless of what's in there, but there's a minimum of what has to be in there in order for it to produce money on its own, right? Not a crazy amount of money, but it's still money that's not sitting somewhere making no money. There is a cap on how much I allow to be in that account, or I'll have a time frame in which I'll allow money to sit in that account outside of that cap before I move it over to either an investment portfolio, or just either my trading portfolio or investments in general, so that my investments can just grow over time and I can either use that investment money for an emergency, which I've done, instead of pulling money from elsewhere, and I'll just let things grow. I've never let money sit idly and make no money. And so that cap will be moved over from savings, which has already made money, to either a trading account, if you want to look into, day trading, spot trading, any kind of trading like that, because that is a way to make money, or just investing in stocks or crypto or whatever you might be interested in. So that money is very likely to grow over time, especially an extended amount of time. And you could also contribute, obviously, to an IRA, whether it be traditional or Roth, depending on whether or not you want to use that money for tax purposes in some way, shape, or form. There's a difference between the two. The Roth IRA is taxed on the entry. So when you put the money in, the money is taxed. It's not taxed on the exit. So when you retire and you want to actually use the Roth IRA, it's not taxed. A traditional IRA is taxed when you pull the money out. It's not taxed when you put the money in, because the money that you put in can be used as a tax write-off. So, and it's taxed at, I believe, 22%. So, as a new business owner, so someone like myself, if you're doing your taxes and at the end of the year you owe a certain amount of money and you want to reduce that amount of money, the maximum amount you can put into your traditional IRA is $7,000 if you're younger than the age of 50, and that $7,000 is taxed at 22%, which is somewhere around like $1,500. So that $1,500 will be taken off of whatever you're meant to pay in taxes. So you can now deduct $1,500 from your tax and pay whatever that difference is. So I'd rather set that $7,000 aside for myself later and deduct $1,500 from the taxes that I have to pay now. Because for me as a business owner, I don't expect to ever get money back. I'd rather owe nothing or pay a very small tax at the end of the year, right? I pay my state taxes quarterly and I pay my federal taxes annually. So that's something you need to be prepared for, and obviously setting money aside for it. That's, again, another purpose of savings accounts, for upcoming expenses and also obviously emergency expenses, right? So, and I chose this topic because it's been a common topic in the shop recently, and I have a lot of younger clients, and some people just don't know things, right? So, and because I've spent a lot of my time studying finances and understanding money, because I don't ever want to be poor or broke, or especially as an older person, especially after doing something that I love for so long, I don't want to be old and regret that I did this, and this being something that I love dearly, right? Because being old and dependent doesn't sound fun to me, right? So I want to set myself up for absolute success, and hopefully a bit of this information helps, someone make smart financial decisions from this moment forward, as far as how to divvy up their money, where to put it, and how to make it work for them and set themselves up for success. So I'll tell you straightforward. I use Cash App for a lot of things. So Block, what used to be Square, which is the card processing company that a lot of us barbers use to do transactions, right? So I've been using Square for as long as I've been a barber. I started using Square in barber school, right? So Square essentially has my entire ecosystem just locked in, from my appointment system, the way I process payments for haircuts, my product line, my websites for myself, the barbershop, the hair product line, soon to be my Barber Academy. I'm setting the website up through Square as well. Not as detailed as everything else, because it's pretty much going to be an informational website, because the Academy is going to have an app in itself. So another reason I haven't really been posting these videos. I've been working on that pretty in depth. So again, Square has my entire ecosystem, right? So Square is the parent company now is Block. Block owns Weebly, which is the platform that the websites are hosted on. It's the domain. It's Weebly. Obviously, Square, the payment processing company. They own Cash App, and they own Afterpay. These are all means to help us make money, right? So with Cash App, all of my transactions that come through my Cash App account essentially don't leave my Cash App account, right? So, and that started essentially by accident, because I had so few clients that use Cash App when I first started cutting hair, or I'd say a couple years ago. I had so few clients that did use Cash App that I would forget about the money that was in my Cash App account. And it got to a point where there was, I'd say like $1,200 or something like that, when I remembered to check that account. And then I was like, you know what? I forgot about this money, so I don't want to use it. I'll just let it sit here and just, stack up a little bit. And then I saw that Cash App had allowed stocks as well as Bitcoin. So you were able to purchase stocks and Bitcoin within Cash App. And I was like, all right, cool. So I put a little bit into Bitcoin. This is 6 years ago now, I believe. And I put like a couple bucks into every stock, because you're allowed to buy portions of stocks in Cash App, which I greatly appreciate about Cash App. I use a couple other platforms to trade with, and those platforms don't allow you to buy fractions of stocks. You have to buy the entire share for the entire price, whatever the price is at that time. You cannot buy it anything less than what it's listed for. So with that, I would just, divvy the money up between a multitude of stocks, right? And then after looking into a few stocks and purchasing some of them, I started to receive dividends from some of those stocks. And this is only a couple cents, nothing crazy, maybe $1 like here and there depending on the stock. So I did that, and then once I started to receive those dividends, I looked up what companies pay dividends on what schedule, because I wanted a dividend schedule that would pay me every month of the year. So I pretty much built an entire dividend calendar so that my dividends would come in every single month. And I started to focus all my money on those, so that one, my money would continue to grow, because I invest in the stock market is forever on an upward trend, right? So the money grew, dividends grew, and over time I just kept putting money into those specific stocks, and the money just grew in itself over time, right? And then after doing more research, I decided to do some math on what it would look like to have all of those accounts pay me monthly, what amount of money I would need in each of those accounts to pay me essentially what I make as a barber once I want to retire, right? So it's a pretty substantial amount of money to have dividends pay you probably what you currently get paid, and to stay on that schedule, and that money continue to grow over time. So obviously it's the stock market, so it'll fluctuate up and down, so you want it to probably be above what you currently make, right? Or at least what you'll make in a few years closer to your retirement, because obviously as time goes on you intend to make more money, right? So I started to think about trading, because obviously trading would grow the money faster as long as you understand it, do it properly, and make money, right? So I started trading to grow money as well. So the trading account, the funds from the trading account will essentially continue to feed the dividend stocks that I own and continue to grow those so that my dividends increase over time. All of my dividends reinvest themselves and the money just continues to grow, right? So that's just from the saving aspect. Outside of that, you need to understand credit is essential. If you haven't checked your credit score, you probably should. Credit Karma's probably the easiest way. It's not extremely accurate by any means. Anytime my credit's been pulled, it's been 10 to 20 points up or down, depending on, I guess, who's pulling it, I guess. I don't really know. But Credit Karma gives you at least a baseline of understanding where your credit is, and you should be working on it. Don't let anyone tell you that credit is not important unless you're a multi-billionaire of some sort or multi-millionaire and you can buy everything in cash, which most people are not. So definitely focus on knowing what your credit is, how to improve it. And the beauty of all that is we have so many resources available to us, like, all the AIs that currently exist. Everything I'm telling you, you could essentially put into AI and build yourself a platform and a program on how to better whatever your financial situation is. And then you just got to go to work and actually do the work, put the work in, and produce the results. Because we don't have anything set up for it. There's no company that you're putting money into as a barber that's gonna, match your retirement. So this is something that we need to be preparing for, right? But you need to understand your financial situation. You need to understand your financial trajectory, and you need to understand where you want to be and then how to get there, right? Because it's not going to magically happen. It's not going to magically appear. You're not going to magically make six figures, and you're not going to magically save $1 million by the time you retire so that you never have to work again. So if you don't consider any of these things, you will be the old person that is working and still figuring out how to pay bills. And as we understand, life is not getting any cheaper. So you need to grab a hold of your financial situation as soon as possible. And the older you are, the more diligent you need to be. And the more serious you need to be about your financial security as an elderly person. You can get by right now because the day in and day out is what it is. As long as you can afford to live now, that's cool. But you're not going to be able to do what you do now as a senior citizen and above, right? Like, that's not going to be a fucking thing. Like, it's time to lock the fuck in, for real. So, and no matter your age, luckily these are things that, like, I've been focused on literally since I was, I'd say 20, 21 and up. I have been very serious about my financial situation. And anyone that knows me knows that I'm very serious about my money. And I'm very serious about where my money goes, what my money does. I do not like to see my money sit anywhere idly and not make me money. I don't like lazy people, and I definitely don't like lazy money. My money has to work, and yours should too. If you want to ever retire and actually enjoy life and actually be able to afford enjoying life, because enjoying life and putting it all on a credit card and buying all this nice crazy stuff and not being able to put gas in your car is not cool. Or wearing a $20,000-$30,000 watch and not having no money in your account, or buying and expensive everything, and then worrying about how you're gonna, make a car payment, or none of it makes any sense to me whatsoever. And I know people who do it. I've met people, and I know people. I have clients who even do it. I have clients that wear expensive watches and drive a used car, bought a used car, or has a high interest rate on a car, or just all kind of crazy things. So take your financial situation seriously and make some money, and don't retire poor. That's it.